And I just turned around and I hauled ass out of there. I was done. I wasn't dealing with that.
The hypocrisy of the cult is one of the things that turned me away the quickest.
When I turned my headlights on, it turned and looked at us. And one of the things I remember the most were the eyes were glowing red.
I see an orb of light. It is just circling these steps like it is waiting for me.
And he begins to tell them that he saw a UFO. They're basically like, what are you talking about? That's 7 foot up on a tree, peeking around it. And that's where I saw the top of the muzzle, nose, and the eyes. As soon as I made eye contact with this thing, it felt like death.
Welcome back to Tinfoil Tales. I'm your host, Brandon. Tonight I'm joined by Ron and Mark. Guys, thanks for coming on here and talking with me.
Thanks for having us.
Doesn't matter to me who goes first, but would you guys like to let the audience know a little bit about yourself before we dive into it tonight?
Oh, go ahead, Mark.
I'm a writer of science fiction and fantasy. I'm 75 years old. I live in Boulder, Colorado. I got my start in writing with Ron Meyer, the co-author on this book, The High Strangeness of Bigfoot, about 30 years ago. He mentored me and he and I have worked together on numerous projects, thousands of projects in the last 30 years.
Okay.
I practice a martial art called Aikido, and I live in a community that the residents manage, and we do a pretty good job of it, I think.
Okay.
So that's my tale.
So I've been in the entertainment business, starting in public television in the 70s. Then I got a company and was in the rise of cable, producing and distributing. Did the first feature film for Discovery with, Hollywood actors, $1 billion budgets. Turn of the century, I sold my library and focused on producing largely for one company, doing educational material, and the other one doing edutainment, where I got a specialty in serial killers of all things.
Mm-hmm.
And I was hired to do a program on Bigfoot pre-COVID, and wasn't too excited about it. I really had no idea about Bigfoot, but my daughter, who was working for me at the time, said she would largely handle the hard work, and so that's how I got into the paranormal. Other than that, I've been involved in anomalous experiences throughout my life, including non-dual experiences where the self goes away, out-of-body experiences. And lately, we've been recording with a particular protocol we use that we call the CE6 protocol, where we use a mindfulness meditation and a rare old chant from the beginning of natural languages, and we've been getting all sorts of weird recordings, appearances, and even whatever is doing it took control of a bunch of environmental variables, including the magnetism of an area, and lifted it up during the duration. And then on the gyroscope, it lifted us up on the z-axis. So it's been pretty cool.
I'm familiar with the C5 because I've talked to a few people to do that, like the CE5 stuff where they fly over with the UFOs or the lights in the sky, but you're the first one I've ever heard refer to CE6.
I just made it up last summer.
Okay.
CE6, little close encounters of a little more of a kind or something like that. And so, and it was discovered really a year ago last summer that I did it for real with a group of people.
Okay.
And I've done it now in a group of 200 people in Sedona, 60 in Eureka Springs. We did a small one in Bradshaw Ranch. You ever hear of Bradshaw Ranch? It's
yeah.
the Skinwalker Ranch thing.
I had
And
an interview with someone last year about the Bradshaw Ranch.
yeah, it's a cool place. I like it
Mhm.
a lot. I feel good there. But it made a lot. We wrote a book on that, and I did a movie on it that doing extremely well. You can still make money. That one's making a ton of money. It's on every platform. So you just got to be lucky with these things.
Yeah.
So, so right now I'm kind of just pursuing this paranormal aspect of stuff, following the expanding the use of the protocol in different situations and seeing what it's going to result in.
I know with the Bradshaw Ranch stuff, they had, from the guy that I talked to, it wasn't just like paranormal stuff, but they had Bigfoot activity. And he said he even found like large tracks that he also thought was like a sauropod. Have you?
Yeah, we've seen that stuff too, like a big three-toed thing.
Yep.
My son-in-law, he actually saw the Bigfoot. It's called Big Gal of all things, out a window of the Adobe house. I interacted with an entity. It was sitting on a chair. You could see it on an SLS. You know what those are? These cameras that
Yeah.
record like stick figures that when they find a
Hmm.
human figure. And this one was pretty good. It was sitting in the chair, and I had a green light laser, a pointer, and I pointed it at its feet. It looked down and kicked it with its foot. And we have that recorded. It was pretty cool. So it would indicate it had awareness.
Yeah.
And that was probably the coolest thing. And we also found a portal there that kind of worked unpleasantly with a lot of people's biology.
Hmm.
Identified it by a cold spot with a hot spot in between, big electromagnetic, a lot of magnetic fluctuations, and it seemed to go in and out of existence while we were there filming.
That sounds similar to what they have going on there at like Skinwalker Ranch too, with the magnetism and everything. So,
It is.
do you think these areas that are, I don't want to, well, I guess they would be a hot spot, but you think this is something that has some, like with all the activities because of something to do with all the magnetism itself? That's what causes these energies going on there?
I would say no.
Okay.
Um, right now we're working with a hypothesis, which came from Jacques Vallée, kind of a famous dude in
Mm-hmm.
UFO lore and everything, pioneer in technology. He was one of the co-founders of the first version of the internet, and it's that there's a presence, and Colonel John Alexander calls it the it, because he said he can't think of a better word for it, because he was the first one to investigate Skinwalker Ranch, and that presence can masquerade in pretty much any form it wants, from these tic tac type UAPs, or as a Bigfoot, and they have a kind of physicality to them, but it's what actually it is hard to say, and that's kind of what I'm trying to figure out, because it shows up for us at these locations in strange ways and different ways every time.
Yeah. Do you, so you've been writing this new book, and it's basically the high strangeness of Bigfoot. And
Correct.
do you believe that Bigfoot itself, now that you've been investigating it, do you think these Bigfoot are just undiscovered species, or do you think there's a lot more to them than just an ape running around undiscovered?
Go ahead, Mark. I've been talking enough.
um, I think we can pretty much lay to rest the idea of Bigfoot being a separate species or a species of hominid that swings around through the trees in the woods or in the jungle, or lives in the outback of Australia, known as the Yowzi, or lives in the Himalayas as the Yeti, for two reasons. The first, I think, is the most important one, is that there are no fossil there is no fossil record of
Hmm.
such a being anywhere on the planet. Secondly, with the ubiquitousness of cameras nowadays, cell phone cameras, you would think that somebody would get a very clear picture of it
Right.
that says, "Oh, wow, this is a hairy beast that swings through the trees." Those are the two. That's the first main reason. But the second reason goes back to what Ron was talking about in terms of the Jacques Vallée's control system hypothesis. And that is that this presence can manifest as whatever is needed in the moment to influence us in different ways. And in the book, The High Strangeness of Bigfoot, we look at this historically from around 50,000 years ago, when it's considered that humans first began to learn speech, or create speech, I should say, and to the present. And this presence manifests in ways that are familiar to people at the time. So let's take Saint Martin of Tours, who met a beggar on the road. He's a Roman legionnaire. He sees a beggar on the road. He slices his tunic in half, covers him, and then has a vision of what he should really be doing, which is protecting people instead of being a Roman legionnaire killing them. That's a very simplified version of his story. But this vision that he has is in keeping with his worldview at the time. If we go to Joseph Smith, who founded the Mormon religion, an angel comes to him. This is the 19th century. Angels and demons are huge in the 19th century. So of course, his vision is going to be a manifestation of something that's familiar to him. Let's go to the 20th century. We're going through world history very quickly here. If we go to the 20th century.
Can I just interrupt you? Nobody's ever captured an angel or a demon either.
That's true. That's true. Which is very, very salient. Go to the 20th century. The worldview is changing. I'm not saying that God is dead or that religion is dead. I'm not saying that, but the worldview is changing. It's becoming decidedly more secular than it was in the 19th century. And that secularism is going to be seen by individuals who have these experiences. So, some individuals will see angels, some individuals will see demons, but other individuals who are less religious are going to see things that are part of their worldview. UAPs, for example, a Bigfoot, the Dog Man, as another example, cryptids as an example, because this is something that is familiar to them, and we all have familiars. Use the old coven term, familiars. We all have familiars that we're very comfortable with, and those manifestations will come to us with, I call it wisdom. They come to us with wisdom when we need it. And I think that is part of what Jacques Vallée is saying with his control hypothesis system. This presence comes to humans with wisdom when we need it.
I've mentioned before that I think a lot of these things that people see might be the same thing, but we interpret them as what we see them as, or what they want us to see them as. But I think like when people see a Bigfoot, or like you said, even a dog man or an alien or anything like something different, maybe it's because that's what it's being projected to us, and that's how we're supposed to be able to understand it, because we can't actually see what it really is. So it projects an image of what we can understand itself to be. So that's that's where I think a lot of this stuff, and if people have heard me before, like I say, a lot of this is connected. I think a lot of, even with the paranormal aspect to it, I think a lot of it is somehow similar, because someone says their house is haunted. You have all this activity going on there. And I interviewed someone before, they said, think of Bigfoot as like a forest poltergeist, because if you have all the activity you have with Bigfoot in your house, you'd say your house is haunted, but this happens out in the woods, so they call it Bigfoot. I was like, That makes sense to me.
Well, the Salish Indian word Sasquatch, which is synonymous, of course, with Bigfoot,
hmm
doesn't refer necessarily to a hairy beast swinging through the trees, but it does refer to a spirit that is in the forest. And among many groups, whether you're talking about Native American groups or groups on um, in the deserts of South Africa or along the Amazon, refer frequently to spirits that are around them. And in the case, say, of several Plains Indians, these spirits can be very important guiding spirits to you,
hmm
whether it's a part of a vision quest or maybe a some other rite that you're going through. So these these spirits, I think, are extremely important to us. Maybe less important to the scientific community because the scientific community can't find what they call, and I'm going to put quotation marks or air quotes around this, a rational explanation for a Bigfoot or a haunted house, for example.
Right.
Uh,
That's
But you know,
go
uh,
ahead. No, I was just gonna say that's kind of how I feel about it too.
so yet all these things you can't exclude some sort of physical manifestation with them. The Tic Tacs
hmm
that were revealed, traveling at speeds that are impossible. Um, according to the normal consensus laws of physicalism or reductionist physics. We recorded 4 of these on our thermal going just as fast, just as inexplicable. Um, and they're real as can be in some ways, but just impossible as well because nothing we have could go that fast. They went like this,
The
in
zigzag pattern.
crisscross for 16 seconds. And in the protocol, it happened instantaneously when I said to the group of 200 people, look to the skies, and they showed up just to. So, as Colonel Alexander would say, that these things are sentient. In other words, they're aware of what's going on, and they seem to be precognitive to know, to some extent, what's happening before we do. Like when people see Bigfoot running across the road, it's not an accident.
Mhm.
This way of thinking. Um, and these things become life changing for people because they shift the worldview people have if these things are possible,
Yep.
and they can't deny them, although they might try because they don't fit in. And so I think it's part of there's a shift going on right now, kind of like with the death of physicalism, the old scientific consensus that everything is material and energy and space and time, that's just not good enough. That we humans are in many ways very unique, and we have consciousness, and that needs to be explained, among other things. I mean, it seems kind of ridiculous that in the beginning there was a bunch of helium or hydrogen, and that led to Brandon.
Yeah,
I was gonna
go
bring
ahead, Brandon.
this makes me think of something that I heard recently when it comes like to the UAPs and like with ATIP or ALTIP, whatever it's pronounced as, like some of the things that they've done to investigate. One of the guys that was in charge of it, I think his last name was Lakatsky, he was telling people to stop thinking about it as like basically a nuts and bolts type of a craft. If we see these things and without going, because apparently he can't go breaking his oaths or going off record or whatever it is, but the way I interpreted what he was explaining is think of these things more as a consciousness, spiritual type aspect to them rather than a spacecraft. And
That's
that kind of goes back into, I just here recently, the vice president claims these things are, he said demons, which I thought was a random thing to say, but Yeah.
That's his worldview.
Yeah.
So yeah. So I want to go back just a little bit because we're talking about science, and Ron was talking about science and how siloed it can be.
Hmm.
That's not to say that modern science and technology isn't good. I mean, we wouldn't be talking the way we're talking right now without modern science and
Right.
technology. It
Yeah.
just wouldn't exist. But at some point, modern science and technology has to break out of the very small box it's put itself in, that reductionist box that tries to explain everything down to the smallest little item as a way of saying this is how everything's meaningful.
Hmm.
And I believe, and I didn't always believe this, because when Ron and I first met up for the first book we did on aliens and Bigfoot, he recruited me because of my skepticism, and and one of the great things that Ron convinced me of as we've continued our working together in the last 6 to 7 years is that my skepticism can make me so stubborn that I'm not able to see the forest for the trees. So dialing back my skepticism, I'm able to say science isn't bad, but if it could break out of that narrow box it's put itself in, it might actually expand to even greater abilities than it has now.
And
So
science is just people doing stuff, writing symbols,
yeah,
form of language or mathematics.
yeah.
Uh, There's no science that wasn't done by some human being who was conscious. And you could take all the written texts relating to, physics or biology and all the symbols. And if we had no culture to interpret them, they would be meaningless because it's just the map that we currently think is, the map of reality at best. It's
Hmm.
not the story. But right now, I think the shift that's happening is that we're beginning to live with not knowing. I
Mhm.
think all these things are asking us, you can't figure them out. Those tic tacs, we can't figure them out. When those things showed up at similar types of things showed up at Sedona, I don't know how to make sense of it. Nobody knows how to make sense of it. We just got to kind of live in this state of we just don't know. And I think that's valuable, especially in relationship to the artificial intelligences that are coming along, because they certainly can't function in not knowing. But mostly the great inventions come about when people are in a state of not knowing. They're just puzzling and thinking, and all of a sudden, boom, something shows up that connected things that weren't connected before, like the classic example of things falling on Earth and planets going around the sun. That these two things could be related,
Mhm.
and most of science occurs that way when things that weren't related become related, and that's the big step forward. And then you have some more of those, and then you have more problems and odd patterns, and eventually some person comes along and makes another set of connections, and it just moves along like that. But I think right now it's good to be living and not knowing, because that's where the creative aspect and juice of human beings resides. That's just my opinion.
Hmm. It makes life a little more interesting, I think, when there's stuff that we don't actually know, because it gives us something to research into, look for more. I don't know if that's just a human trait or not, but we all have a feeling like there's something more than what we know. There's always something else to
Absolutely.
it.
Jacques Vallée talks about that with his control system hypothesis, that the presence creates mysteries for humans. And I've said this before, that humans are as curious as cats.
Hmm.
And if the earth really were flat, like cats, we'd be chasing after everything and falling off the edge. I mean, we just would, because we want to know about it. So that state of not knowing that Ron was talking about is the greatest source of our personal growth. And some people take it in different directions. Stephen Jobs, for example, took it in the direction of Apple, and Next thing you know, we have iPods, iPhones, iMacs. I mean, it's just an incredible display of technical of technologies from his not knowing. For some of us, though, the not knowing is along a spiritual path. For some of us, the not knowing is along a physical path. We don't know how fast we can run. We don't know how fast we can swim. Can you imagine Michael Phelps had gotten into the water and he went, "Oh, wow, this is wet. Well, I really don't care about it." No, he doesn't know anything about it. He goes, "Well, I want to find out a little bit more about this." And the next thing you know, 30 years later, he's got 23 gold medals and the greatest sports hero of our generation, or of the millennial generation, not our generation.
And it's not to like dig at anyone that's religious or whatever, but I've always thought it was interesting that a lot of people are willing to accept their religious beliefs without any sort of validation to it, like far as physical proof that they can prove of a different, like a higher power, like in like a God aspect to it. But the same people will not believe in UFOs or aliens or the idea of Bigfoot or these spirits or whatever, but you're putting all your faith into something of the same nature, of a different type of a creator, a being, a different type of energy, a power, but you won't believe in the aspects of some of these other things too.
Human beings are strange, aren't they?
Yeah, very much.
Sometimes we find it easier to latch on to those things that feel familiar to us. So I'm just going to make a wild guess that all of us grew up in a household that had some connection to religion somewhere, whether our parents took us to church or our neighbors' parents took their kids to church. So that's a familiarity to us. And whether we went to church or not, there's a huge familiarity just in the worldview around us at all times. People are always talking about religion. And right now, the president's in a war with the Pope of all things. I mean, so we're all conscious of different religious faiths, sort of driven into us through history and through our lives as we grow up. So say it makes sense that we gravitate toward those things that are familiar to us. But along your lines, what you're talking about, Brandon, when we take that familiarity and use it as a skepticism to say nothing else can exist outside of it, then we've really siloed ourselves into this small sort of worldview that doesn't allow us to grow. I don't think it allows us to grow spiritually, personally, but it certainly doesn't allow us to grow in the sense of becoming more aware of who we are as human beings, and what we can do as human beings.
Our capabilities are, we're not even really tapped into, I think, a lot of the abilities that we can manifest, but I don't know if that's by design or just us not knowing right now, but I feel like there's things that humans are capable of that we don't even know how to scratch the surface of.
So I think, these people who are satisfied with Christianity, they're kind of sourced from the same thing, that there's a mystery to their life. They don't quite understand how it is that they are. There's an insecurity there. They know that they're vulnerable in their bodies. And so the thought is there's got to be something bigger and better than just this, being hungry, running around and drinking and pooping and knocking each other around. There's got to be something else. And in many ways, these forms of Christianity is kind of an answer to it. That says there's a higher power and that somehow you're connected to that higher power. And I think that's okay. I think pretty much everything that, even my own sense of why I'm here, has never been totally satisfied. I still don't get how it is that I am, So, and I probably never will. But there's this I think ever since humans got language, they asked that question because they could. I don't think my dog worries about if he's going to go to heaven or not, or the squirrel, or how it is that he's existing and all that sort of stuff. It's us human beings that ask those questions and feel the desire that we're connected to something bigger, and that's the mystery because we don't quite know what it is. And it keeps me going. How about you, Brandon?
I think it's interesting, and this is just me thinking out loud, but it's always been interesting to me that we are basically the only species that I'm aware of. Obviously, there was offshoots, but we're the only ones we do what we do. Like, we're the most evolved in the sense that we live in houses, we drive vehicles, we have technologies, we do all those other things. And if you look at all the other species, there's nothing close to us. So it's like we are special in the sense that we are human. Like, we have this ability, we have thoughts, we can think about things, we can actually think about like religions, we have these ideas, and apparently we make weapons and blow each other up too. Like, but we're the only species that seems to do that. You don't see any other species. Like, obviously primates now they communicate amongst themselves or whatever, but it's not how we are talking, right? You know what I mean? They don't have
No,
they don't have
not
the
like-
humanization like we do.
I think the redefining what it means to what a human is happening right now. Like you said, there's one aspect of it is the expansion of certain abilities that can emerge that are quite surprising. To say precognition, even if it's very short, for example, or telekinesis. Did you ever bend a spoon or something like that with your mind?
I've tried. I've never been able to do it.
So I did it. It was really cool, and it just was like putty, but there was no heat to it. Which would, if you had heated it up to bend it, it would have been pretty hot, but it wasn't. So we did this interview with Colonel Alexander, and he said that when they were looking for people to do telekinesis experiments, like using their mind to kill things like goats, the first test was could they bend the spoon, and if they could they accept that they could bend the spoon? And not everybody could. Surprisingly, it just didn't fit in with their worldview, and so they were dismissed. And then the rest of, I guess, the ones that succeeded in both those tests, moved on and killed goats and who knows what else. So there are these capabilities, and maybe it's all human in some sense. That's one of the new ideas emerging, is that there's little us and then there's big us, that this mystery is also us, that there's only the one. I'm getting kind of wild here. Sorry about that.
No, you're good. The movie, I think, was called The Men That Stare at Goats. Wasn't that about them trying to do that?
That's right.
Yeah.
It was kind of, Hollywood version of it.
I figured the movie version wasn't 100% accurate of what really went on, because Hollywood likes to portray things a little differently than reality.
So, Colonel Alexander said that they did succeed to be able to kill goats. When they did the autopsy on the goats, it was like there was a bullet moving through their heart, but there was no enter or exit wound. That's all he would tell me.
I know they used to try remote viewing. That's something that I think they've talked about, and that's where the people.
Oh yeah.
It makes me wonder if we're able to do that, and then you talk to people that say that they're able to leave their body, like travel the astral plane or whatever, like their consciousness leaves their body. We could, as being raised as a Christian, obviously we have a soul, is what I was raised. Is the soul basically our consciousness? It's our energy. And then people are able to leave their body and then travel around. And I've talked to people that supposedly are able to do this. on command. Like they can go into a meditative state and they leave their body and they travel through these different things and they've interacted with different beings from these different planes of existence. It gets to the point to where it's like, are they a different reality, a different dimension, like that's where my brain I started to get confused with it because it's like trying to process all this information and it's like I don't understand how someone's able to do that, let alone like where they're actually going and what they're interacting with.
Nobody does. You're not alone in that.
Yeah.
You know, that's pretty typical of the response. We have near-death experiences, right?
Mm-hmm.
Same sort of kinds of telling of the ineffable, which you can't really talk about, these experiences. And so this idea that it's your consciousness that leaves the body and still is aware, you know, of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
That's one of the like 24 theories of consciousness right now that nobody's really settled on, you know, any one of them in particular.
Yeah.
They're all fascinating to think about, though.
So that I love hearing stuff about it, but at the same time, someone had asked me if I'd ever want to try it, and I was like, my luck would be I'd actually be the one that leaves my body, but not be able to come back to my body. That'd be my consciousness or whatever would be trapped wherever it is.
Sounds like a Hollywood movie. You end up in stuck in somebody else's body along with them.
I better write it and get in touch with my Hollywood buddies and get a cut of that.
So I can tell you one story like that. We have this thing. There's this prayer tree in a place in Colorado where people touch it and they have these weird experiences. It was something that the Ute Indians had done, and this one girl, young teenage girl, did this, and she described leaving her body and traveling. I said, that was really cool. And she said, no, it wasn't. I'd never want to do that again.
I've talked to someone before, and I've actually talked to several people. One's version of the near-death experience was they saw people from their past. Like it's almost the same, like they saw their loved ones that have passed away, and they were around them. And then I've heard other people talk about when they passed, they saw a light, but they were told not to go to the light. And if you go in the light, you're basically going back in a recycle event. So they didn't go to the light and they started seeing these other things. And that's how they started traveling around and seeing the other, like these weird beings and other things. I was like, again, I don't know if this is true because people can make things, you know what I mean? Like you don't know what everyone's experienced, or maybe that's what they believe that was happening to them, but there's no real verification one way or another. It's just someone's account of what they experienced.
Well, it's not unlike people who say they've been abducted by aliens, or that they've seen a UAP, or they've seen Bigfoot.
Mm-hmm.
These, I like to say about people who share their experiences. For example, one time Ron and I were discussing a book we were writing. The book was called Simulation, and that the Earth is the premise of the book is that the world that we now inhabit is actually not real. It's a giant AI simulation. For simplicity's sake. And they were listening to us discuss this book that we're writing, and because we discussed the characters and everything. And the young woman, they probably were about 50 years younger than Ron and me, and the young woman comes over and says, I don't know whether you guys would find this interesting, but we were abducted by aliens. And she and her partner, a young man about the same age, sat down and talked with us for about 10 minutes about their experience. And you could tell talking to them that they were not making it up. They were not like, oh, we're going to titillate these guys and have fun with them. They were earnest. And in their earnestness, they revealed a lot about themselves personally. I'm not talking about details or gory details or something, but about how they viewed life. And it was very important to them that they came out of this alien abduction situation feeling actually like they had had a beneficial experience. And then as soon as, they got done telling their tale, they thanked us and they walked away. And Ron and I went back to discussing the book Simulation. but I came away from that, and Ron has had similar experiences with people who come up to him, talk about Bigfoot sightings or UFOs, that these people aren't making it up. So when they're traveling on the astral plane or they're seeing Bigfoot or something, this is very real to them. It is something that really has happened. And it's not a psychotic break. It's a real happening for them.
Mm-hmm. I think when people come on my show, when I interview everyone, I'm not trying to prove or disprove anybody. I think everyone that comes on here believes what they're telling me.
Mhm.
And I try and remain skeptic too. Like you mentioned earlier, like you're skeptic. I've had experiences and I try and write them all off. I try and explain them. That's the reason I made a documentary, is because I want to know what happened to me. And
Mhm.
I'm still looking for answers. Because for me, I'm kind of one of those people that was like, I didn't believe in a lot of this stuff, but the more I've experienced in life, I've now went from being skeptic to I believe that there's something really going on and I can't explain it.
Mhm.
But
Mhm.
I think when people come on here, when they're explaining what happened to them, they 100% are telling the truth. Like they did experience something, but I'm of the side of, well, maybe it's not exactly like they saw Bigfoot, but kind of like what we were talking about before, it's a Bigfoot to them. But what if it's something else that they had seen and it was for a reason? Because I feel like anyone that has these experiences, they're usually a reason why they have them.
Mhm. Yeah.
So one of the ways to look at this is that people are taking seriously that there's quite a few of these different states of consciousness. People who are on hallucinogenics, they have a variety of different experiences that they talk about. We have dreams. There's the hypnagogic state, the state between awake and asleep, where you're like in a theater of action, and when people show up. There are people that travel the astral planes, that have near-death experiences. They have different consciousness experiences. There's many of these types of things, not just one,
Mm-hmm.
that we seem, as human beings, seem to be capable of experiencing one way or another. Mark and I do flow practices based on simple martial arts, and we get into a state where the doer is gone. There's no self anymore. Everything works out wonderful. In a number of cases, when I was in that state, my body returns to my 25 version of my body, and I move freely in a way that's just not possible normally. I mean, recently I was at a place where we were walking this place in Wisconsin where the Beast of Bray Road is, and I slipped into that state. And usually I'm the laggard, because I'm old. And all of a sudden I was totally free. I just charged along way ahead of everybody else. And they said, "What was going on?" And I just said, "Well, I got into this state." So that's another state. And Mark's familiar with that state because we're basically, there's a when I say we, there's situational awareness and a kind of power that can just not kill anybody instantaneously in that state, because there's no self doing anything, yet things get done. It's weird as hell, right, Mark?
Absolutely. We were training with a friend of ours, Dimitri, and I was attacking Dimitri, and he put himself in that state. And I would say that Dimitri touched me with all the power that you'd stick your finger into cotton candy. I mean, you wouldn't you can stick your finger in without cotton candy without very much power. And I remember that as I was falling backwards, I was thinking, oh, I can get my balance. And suddenly there was no earth beneath me. So whatever Dimitri was experiencing, suddenly I experienced, and I'm like, I don't know how I don't know how I'm going to land because there's nothing beneath me. And then I hit the ground, and it's like I come out of that state. Dimitri comes over and helps me up. But these flow states are not about being successful. They're about being in the moment, being in the now, and whatever happens is successful. That might be one way of saying it, but I don't like that term. Whatever happens, happens. And there's no goodness to it. There's no evil to it. There's just simply what is happening.
And there's no mark and there's no wrong.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I do.
So there's a variety of these things, and people are coming forward and beginning to see that there is a big variety of different consciousness states, and it certainly means that we as humans are much more unique than we ever thought we were.
Mm-hmm.
I do have a question, and the footprint on your wall beside you has got me thinking about this. If these Bigfoot creatures or whatever we're seeing are more of a spiritual type thing, how does stuff like that leave a footprint or some sort of physical evidence if they're not necessarily a physical being?
So there's something really powerful behind that, right?
Mm-hmm.
Something really strange that we can't figure out. Because, people have reported seeing a Bigfoot and then it disappears and they go find the print. I mean, it disappears before their eyes. I mean, I've talked to multiple people who've had that experience.
Mm-hmm.
So, the Tic Tacs, they're impossible according to the way we think, but yet they were there. So they have a physical effect on. They're creating a thermal image, which is you have to be kind of physical to do that, like the ones we captured. Yet they're doing things that would normally be impossible. So this, whatever this is, allows for that to happen. And and that's not normally the way we can think about something, right? If they're just spirits, they'll just float around in our mind. They're not going to. Well, people have, telekinesis. In a way, is kind of that, right? You have your mind and you kill a goat by thinking about it.
Mm-hmm.
Not that different, is it?
I mean,
there's nothing there to look at. I don't think when the telekinesis is taking place, and then there's a result. Yet there's probably an experience of the person who's doing that has his own or her own experience of doing something, right? Or something's happening that there's an awareness of it. Not random. Somebody said, kill the goat.
my concern with that is if they're able to kill the goat, where does it stop at from there? Does that mean someone could be out there just anywhere deciding they're going to kill any sort of person just from thinking about it?
Well, it certainly suggests it's possible, doesn't it?
Yeah. So the reality is, and people have said this before and asked me, because obviously when I did what I did for my film, I was out in the woods and doing all sorts of things. And they're like, are you afraid of what happens if you run into something? I was like, I'm more afraid of running into a person than I am one of these things, because I was like, to my knowledge, the human is the ones more likely to shoot me or kill me or something, rather than a hairy man out in the woods or a dog man or something like that. I'm probably going to have more of a chance of getting shot by a property owner or something.
Oh, your parents were wise to let you know about that.
Yeah.
They did a good job.
When we talk about the footprints, which you brought up, and Ron said you can find the footprints, they go for a few feet and then they suddenly disappear. That actually also fits in with Jacques Vallée's control system hypothesis, that the mystery is there for a reason. If we actually caught the Bigfoot, we wouldn't have a mystery anymore. We go, aha, we have it, but the presence has that mystery for a purpose. And so the presence is able to manifest in the ways it needs to manifest, including footprints, which go on for 5 or 6 steps, or maybe a dozen steps, and then disappear. The Tic Tacs that appear in the sky, they're zigzagging across the sky at impossible speeds, and then they disappear.
I don't want to interrupt, but
oh no, it's okay.
You mentioned Tic Tacs. Do you think it's odd that back in the 40s they called them Foo Fighters, like the balls of light that they were seeing, and then everyone started calling them flying saucers, which was based
Mhm.
off of Kenneth Arnold, I think is what it was. His original depiction of wasn't really a saucer, but he said it was skipping like a saucer, so that's where the whole flying saucer thing came about.
Mhm.
But,
Interesting.
but what we know of these crafts, like they've changed their appearance as we've changed our technology. So as the more evolved we've gotten with our technologies, the description of these things have always been more advanced in the sense they're not the same descriptions.
Yeah.
So they went from being the original depiction that he was like a crescent shape that had like these little, almost looks like what we would call now the stealth bomber, but it was more rounded in the front rather than what we
Mhm.
have. And then they turned into these crafts, these round, the typical stereotype of a UFO, like the round
Mhm.
saucer crafts. And then they started to get triangular, like throughout the 90s and early 2000s, they were all reporting these black triangles and everything. Now everyone's talking about tic tacs. It's almost like the more we get into it, the shape and the description of what these things are has also changed.
Yeah.
Keeps the mystery alive, doesn't it?
Yeah. The more you start to find things out, so you think, then it keeps on evolving too. The mystery just keeps being more of a mystery.
So that's
Well,
the hypothesis.
Mm.
part of it is human ingenuity and
That keeps us
imagination.
not knowing. Keeps us not knowing.
Yeah. So when you don't know something and you're guessing at it, your imagination can come up with fantastic things. When the pilgrims came to the New World and they went out into the woods for the first time, they heard these enormous sounds. There's some in some of the diaries they talk about these enormous, incredible sounds, and they thought that there must be huge beasts out in these woods like bears. And it turned out that they were like raccoons because they had never seen a raccoon before, and so that noise was that had to be huge. So humans' imagination is great. We can go with H.G. Wells' War of the Worlds, Jules Verne, Captain Nemo, 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea, these great imaginations of science fiction that happen. The day the first day the Earth stood still, I think it's 1953, has an actual saucer, which goes back to what you were talking about, Brandon. But by the time Star Trek comes around, it's still kind of saucer shaped, but now it's got these kind of limbs on it,
Hmm.
and then the Romulans have warbirds that are different looking and stuff. And by the time you get to Star Trek: The Next Generation, the imagination has is full blown that ships can take any size shape. If you're a, um, a fan of SG-1, some of them are pyramids, you know.
Right.
So our imagination allows us to expand the definition of what we think is strange to from everyday household items like a saucer to a warbird, a Romulan warbird in Star Trek: The Next Generation. That doesn't mean that once we use our imagination to to see something, doesn't mean that that mystery is solved. If anything, our imagination makes the mystery even bigger. And if we go back to Jacques Vallée's control system hypothesis, that mystery is key to human evolution. From the time we created language 50,000 years ago, that's what most researchers believe, is that uh, humans didn't start creating language till somewhere between 150,000 years ago. From that moment forward, we have evolved in many different ways, not only language, but technology, and our religions of everything has evolved until we're at the 21st century. I have a personal feeling that we've evolved for a reason. I haven't really pinpointed that reason yet. Ron and I've discussed it many times. Uh, the but my feeling is that the current AI technology, the LLM technology, can mimic humans so well that what if the mystery, the presence, has been pushing this mystery on us to create a different species, a silicon species, for example, or something that mimics humans. I don't know. It's just, for me, that's since I'm a writer of science fiction and fantasy, I find that a very interesting proposition.
I saw a photo today and someone remade it with today's technology. And the original AI photo was generated in 2023. And
Mhm.
you could tell it looked real in some aspects, but you could tell from 3 years ago that it was AI. The
Mhm.
new photo of the same exact thing is very hard to tell that it's AI now.
Mhm.
And to me, it's only been 3 years. And it's getting that hard to tell photos of being what was easily able to be detected it wasn't real to things now that are like, well, is that AI? You have to question everything now
Mhm. Mhm.
because it's getting so realistic. And if it's that way within 3 years, what's it going to be like in another 3 years?
So we're just three avatars talking to each other, right?
Mm-hmm. That's kind of that's kind of where I go with it, because the whole simulation theory is actually something that I kind of get into, as even I can answer it in like, yeah, religious aspect too. There is a creator. I was like, yeah, there is a creator. So what if the creator is whoever designed what we're in? Like the world that we live in, our universe could have been part of their engineering. So everything that we're guessing and things that happen and the strange things that are happening is all part of some sort of a code that we're involved in this weird, strange simulation of a life. But I don't think it's like the Matrix. I don't think we're just plugged into a machine. But
Mhm.
the reality is, if we're able to evolve and transfer our consciousness or whatever, our energy, and travel around and do all these other things, it's almost like you're upgrading. Like you said, when you go into these states, when all of a sudden you have this energy where you're out leading ahead of people, and you get this like state of, that's not a normal thing. So how are we able to do that? Like for most people, they couldn't do some of the things that you guys have talked about being able to do. So it's like you've
That's,
tapped into something.
Mhm.
so it's the opinion I have here is that you get rid of the doer. The doer has to disappear.
Hmm.
When people have these mystical experiences, near-death experiences, the doer, the Brandon, the Ron, or the Mark is gone, and you can call that the ego. But the language part is gone too. That goes with it because that's what the language creates is the ego, the self. And when they come back, they can't put it into words because there were no words or symbols in that sense, in the normal sense. Because then, and that's in the flow state too, that the doer goes away. And that seems to characterize almost all these kinds of states that are, even the hallucinogenics, the normal ego disappears and weird shit shows up. That I don't know if you ever had taken a trip, but you know what I'm talking about. The mystical experiences, religious ones, the self is gone, and one is usually one, no separation with God or
Right.
the soul, something like that. And there's the language is gone again. So
And language explains the world around us. If you think about a cat never tries to explain the world around it. A
No.
cat just sleeps, gets up, eats, chases mice, goes back to sleep, whatever. It just does what it does.
it's not
We
thinking about the
explain,
cats 3 blocks away.
yeah. I mean, and if you've ever taken a dog out for a walk, dog is all over the place
Hmm.
because everything is absolutely in the moment for it. But humans are unique in that we have language, and we use language constantly to explain what's going on around us. So right now, each of our brains is looking at an image on the screen. I know this is only audio for the people listening, but each of us is looking at an image on the screen, and we're explaining what's happening through language. when Ron talks about the flow state, when you're in the flow state, he's right. The brain turns off. The brain, which is constantly explaining to us with words and symbols, which other species don't have. We're the only species on the planet that has words and symbols. Those words and symbols go away. And whatever happens, happens. There's no goodness to it, no badness to it. It just happens. When Dimitri touched me and I fell down, I didn't feel as though Dimitri was doing something bad to me. All I thought was, where am I going to land? The earth seemed to have disappeared. And I mean, I'm not even thinking that in the sense of how we're talking here. That actually happened after I hit the ground and they asked me what happened. I said, I tried to explain it to them. But as we have found out, going into the flow space, you can't explain it. The moment you explain it, it disappears.
You need a self to explain it.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's just the way we talk.
We had a guy who wanted to experience what we were doing, and he brought a friend who was an actor. And I find that actors are fabulous at learning things. They seem to just get rid of their ego the moment they need to learn something,
Right.
and they just learn it. At any rate, this guy had never worked with a weapon called a Joe. It's a Japanese staff. It's about 50 inches tall and an inch in diameter. And we were doing a flow state exercise with that. He'd never done this before, but he went into that flow state and he was working with, I think it was with Dimitri. At any rate, we watched him. He was perfectly in sync. Now, Dimitri is an expert with the Joe, knows how to use it. This guy had no idea how to use a Joe. He'd never used one before, but suddenly he's in complete sync with Dimitri, and they're moving effortlessly around each other. He puts the Joe down, they stop, the guy puts the Joe down, he looks at us and he starts crying because he'd never had that experience before. And he couldn't explain it.
So he wanted to have this experience for a long time as a meditator.
Mm-hmm.
His name is Lonnie Woodley. He's the father of Shailene Woodley, an A-listing actress.
Mm-hmm.
You know who she is?
Yeah, I do. She used to date or was married to Aaron Rodgers, wasn't she?
Well, she hung out with Aaron Rodgers.
Yeah.
I was hoping I'd get to meet Rodgers as a result of that, but that didn't work out. So yeah, this was, the dissolution of the self and the contact with the truth of whatever the greater truth that showed up for him was something, he had been seeking, but all he had to do was get rid of Lonnie. And it seems like there's something about the movement practices that we do and that are kind of like play martial arts, make it occur quicker than, sitting on the couch, for sure. Because you can sit on the couch like he had done, for nearly 25, 30 years and never had the experience that he was told was available to him, the truth of who he is or whatever however you want to frame it.
So 100,000 years ago, before we created language, we were in that state most of the time. Just in that state, in that flow state most of the time, as a hunter-gatherer. Whether we're in a clan situation or a small family group of some kind, you're in that situation all the time. All the technology that we've developed in 50,000 years, it's very difficult to get into that state. You're driving in your car, you're going to the bank, this technology makes it very difficult to get into that flow state. So that's what makes it so unique to us now. It's not that unique to a person who, like a hunter-gatherer in the Amazon. They become one with that forest in that moment. There is no thinking of, I'm going to have a huge meal when I catch this deer. No, they're just simply in that moment.
So there's research now suggesting that Brandon and you, Mark, were in that state when you were children before you knew language,
Mm-hmm.
that you're naturally in that state. But it's also the state in which you just learn language. Nobody teaches it. You pick it up by hearing it, which goes to the another idea that the LLM structure that's at the heart of the ChatGPT and Claude and all those, that we have one operating too. That's how we're talking to each other. It's auto-regressive in nature. So anyhow, perhaps we somehow or another we can connect with the brief time when we were kids, when before we got language, when we were just everything was play, everything was just you have any kids?
I have 4.
So there's that time when they're just free as can be, right?
Yeah.
And then it starts.
I've got 2
then-
teenagers and a 7-year-old and a soon-to-be 5-year-old.
They're just transitioning out of the glorious state of oneness with the universe.
Mm-hmm.
And then, of course, when they get to be teenagers, then they get to be social animals and watch out.
Yeah. I've got a 15-year-old daughter and a 13-year-old son.
Oh, so you know that then too.
Yeah. It's a adjustment, we'll just say that. But before we've been going on for a little over an hour, before we wrap things up, is there anything else you guys would like to discuss before we talk a little bit more about your latest book?
No, I think
Yeah, we pretty much we're starting to repeat ourselves a little bit in terms of the Jacques Vallée idea of presence and mystery, the flow state. So yeah, let's move on to the high strangeness of Bigfoot.
Is this something that the book, is it something that you guys have been talking about for a while? And
not at all. It started just last summer when I did the first actual control, what I call the CE6 protocol, and all this weird stuff showed up that we recorded. And this was a place in the Rockies that had no paranormal. It wasn't like a Bradshaw Ranch or anything. It was just an area along a creek, in the mountain. And then I took it to Mount Shasta, which is just the opposite. It's probably one of the most noted spiritual places. And the presence showed up in a different way. And so I did a movie of this because that's what I do. I make movies. And but I could not get into the historical aspect behind these phenomena, such as the origin of music, which is autoregressive. Probably these humans that developed language were doing music first, which is autoregressive. Means the right note has to follow the next note, and it keeps building that way, because they could beat drums or, and that and trace these histories of the mystery, how the paradigm shifts, allow for the next innovation in technology, and a new paradigm shift, and you get new instruments, and then it shifts again. And so the book really expands on that whole aspect, plus also telling the story of what happened at these 2 sites. That's kind of the essence. You can watch the movie on YouTube, High Strangeness of Bigfoot.
Mm-hmm.
And last I checked, there's over 80,000 views on it, which is pretty good for a couple weeks. And then the book has got the same title, and you can find it on Amazon and Barnes and Noble, all those good places.
I'll make sure to include links in the show notes for anyone listening.
That would be really good.
Yeah. So Ron has the actual experimental experience.
Mm-hmm.
And he came to me because I was trained as a historian at the University of Cincinnati. So then he asked me to investigate the historical aspects of the high strangeness of Bigfoot, where we get into the origin of language and how the presence manifests itself throughout history, from what I would say is to individuals for most of human history to the present day in the 21st century, when thousands of individuals are coming forward with these kinds of experiences thanks to the internet.
So, for example, the Bigfoot is sort of an archetype in a way. It's the hairy wild man or hairy wild woman who's free, in nature. And there's a bit of us wanting to be that still, And I think the Bigfoot that we see is kind of like that archetype, and that's in our mind, the subconscious or the collective conscious of all people. Because there are other archetypes like the father or the mother that we all share. And one of the ways the presence can move things forward quickly is to shift that collective consciousness archetype in some way for everybody, because everybody seems to have access to it, at least in the way some people think about it currently.
Mm-hmm.
There's a mental aspect, not just the physical,
The more I've gotten into a lot of this stuff, the more questions keep popping up. And that is one of the biggest frustrations I have, like doing my show, doing the things that I do. And I've realized that the answers that I'm looking for, I don't think I'm ever going to get. And that seems to be the thing with a lot of people that go down this path is we're always searching for answers, but we're coming away with more questions. We're not getting that answer. And we've talked about this a little bit earlier. It's like we keep evolving the question. Like it keeps the human nature to keep wanting that mystery. We want to solve the mystery. We want the answers, but it just keeps changing to keep us going.
That's the idea we're expounding in the book and the movie.
Mm-hmm. I think
So what's the club?
I said I think it's definitely something that I'm going to end up checking out because it feels like it is right up my alley. A lot of the stuff the path that I'm going down myself, my own personal journey, I feel like this is something that I can relate with.
Cool.
Good.
Well, we can probably wrap this up, but for anyone listening, where can they, do you want anyone to be able to reach out to you guys if you have anything coming up that you're going to be at or anything that you would like to let the audience know about?
The next conference I'm going to be at is in Alta, Illinois at the end of June. It's the Great American Ghost Conference.
Okay.
Do you like ghosts?
Yeah. I'm going to send you an email with the link to my documentary. It covers a lot of the stuff we've talked about. It has paranormal, it's got UFOs, and it's got cryptids all in there, all from this small area. So I think you might find it interesting.
I'll reply back with the link to Jensen Media for you.
Okay. I appreciate that.
So you should come to Alta. Not that far away from you. You could drive there.
Do you happen to know what date it is? I'm booked on June 20th. I'm doing an event in Indiana that I'm speaking at.
So meanwhile, if people want to read the book, they can get it through Hanger Publishing, or they can go to Amazon. It's at Amazon. And the movie, Ron, the movie is available on all the different platforms. Ron handles the movie. I'm just the author or co-author on the book.
I'll send you the information on that conference. And
Okay.
you know where Alta, Illinois is? It's kind of across from St. Louis.
Okay, yeah, it's probably about 3 hours away from me. I'm in north central Indiana. So is the documentary available only on YouTube, or is it on all the other streaming platforms as well?
It's on YouTube right now.
Okay. Well, it's been a pleasure talking to you guys.
Thank you very much for having us on. It's been great.
Yeah. Thank you guys very much. If you would like to be a guest on Tinfoil Tales, remember to send an email to tinfoiltalespodcast@gmail.com, or you can also go to tinfoiltales.com and go to the contact section. Just make sure to reach out and get a hold of me, and we will get something scheduled for a future episode. You can also find Tinfoil Tales on Facebook and Instagram. Just look for Tinfoil Tales podcast. You can reach out to me that way too. Remember to share the show around. Word of mouth is the best way to help the show grow. And just remember, truth comes at cost. Are you willing to pay the price?